It's been a month and a half of my NBA prediction model, Trey, and I want to break down some of the ways that we've learned throughout this model process, some of the most statistically, advantageous bets Trey has come up with this season, and some of the ways that we've improved this model over the last month and a half and the near 200 NBA games that Trey has tracked this season. So if you missed the first video, what we do is we look at this NBA Power Index ratings, and we take the differentials of each team, offensive ratings, defensive ratings, and the overall power ratings here. And that gives us a number, the difference between the teams, and we calculate that number against the spread, and that gives us Trey's prediction. So Trey's been a model just against the NBA point spread, not over-unders, and that's really what we're talking about today. I was really interested against the spread and against winners, less about some of those other more complicated things to calculate. So overall, Trey has been 71% of picking winners. Now, you might say, oh, well, you could pick the spread and easily be over 60%. Now, you're right. You could be over 60%, but you're not right in truth, because Trey has also predict 12 out of 18 of those underdogs to win altogether. So that, with that number included, it's a little bit closer to that 71%. And I think Trey has overall beat the spread more times than not. So Trey's done pretty well, and that's included 61, nearly 62% on the favorites, 55-ish% on the underdogs. Now, the underdogs have been picked more than twice, well, almost twice the amount of times that the favorites have that Trey has picked in each game, for example. And I think there's a few reasons for that, but we'll get into some of the ways that I've kind of balanced that out and gotten Trey to be more accurate down the line. We talked about the underdogs winning. Now, if you missed in the first video, when the differential was above 4, that was the number that I kind of determined we're going to track that separately, and that stat was really high at the start of the season. It stayed high. It stayed over 75% the whole season. It was almost 85% at the start of this week. That number kind of shrunk down. There are a few games that didn't go Trey's way, but over 75% is really, really good for this model. So that's been games where a team is predicted to win or to lose by a team is predicted to win or the other team is predicted to cover the spread. So, for example, here, we'll look at this game yesterday for New Orleans and Minnesota. Now, Zion Williamson was injured. The model doesn't take into account injuries, and this game was still 5.13. So that differential, negative 5.13, that meant the model had these teams 7.37, and the difference in points, considering the game was at New Orleans. The spread had the game at 12.5. That meant that Trey had this game 5 points closer, meaning that was one of the high differentials, and that won. So that's just an example of that and how we've been tracking that. Another thing that we've done is just looking at when it's a double-digit spread, the favorite wins 60% of the time this NBA season. Now, I know that anyone could look at that and bet the favorite 60% of the time, and it's not always going to hit. But in general, it's been over 60%. When the favorite is predicted to cover, it's been even higher than that. When Trey's number is greater than 10, than the double-digit spread for either team. So that's just been something. And if you're betting off the rip and you don't have a model or anything, if you take the favorite to cover double-digit spreads, you win 60% of the time. Another thing that we've done is when the point differentials are within 1. So this is when a game, has Trey's number is within 1 point of that point spread, meaning the teams are pretty close between Trey's valuation and Vegas's valuation, which, since we know we have more unders covering, that means that this model is probably slightly inflated between those unders. So with that 1 point buffer, basically, we can get these games a little bit closer, and that number, when optimized, meaning when it's 1 point in either direction, either the favorite to win by less than 1 point or the underdog to cover by less than 1 point, if we optimize that together, it's 71%, and that's nearly 30 games, or it's over 30 games altogether, meaning that together, if we take those into account, that between the double digits and the optimized, we can really account for some of those extra underdog picks where maybe you can balance that out and get that number back over 60%. This optimized pick has been one of the best ones. And I just called it optimized because we're taking the winners of the favorites and the losers of the underdogs here to cover. You take those together, 24 and so forth. So I think that's just kind of the basic rundown. We've got this little chart here. We copy and paste it into each day, copy and paste that back over to look at that. And something I do want to do, and if you guys have any suggestions, leave it below, but I really want to have something to do this kind of automatically, something in sort of AI or something where it updates automatically. I'm not sure I want to pay because I'm not really winning or losing money. This is more tracking, but if you guys have any suggestions, please let me know. Something else that we've done is we changed the weights. So in these weights at the start of the season, I think we had the power index number at 50%, this predictive number down at 10%, and these each at 15% apiece, offensive and defensive ratings. Now, as these teams, their records have improved and their power ratings have become a little bit more firm where there's just less fluctuation game by game, I think the offensive and defensive ratings have mattered less because those are less indicative of which team is going to win. For example, Denver, they have a fantastic offensive rating, the best offensive rating in basketball. Now, they have a bad defensive rating. Frankly, their defensive rating is probably outside of the top 20 in the NBA, but they have some of the most wins in the whole Western Conference. So I think that those values matter a little bit less. Now, I'm still including them altogether because I think for some of these games where it's a little bit closer, for example, this Utah versus Brooklyn game, you can see that Utah is favored a little bit more, but then with this negative number included, it pulls these games a little bit closer. I just think that it can help with accuracy overall with offensive and defensive ratings. But even then, you look at OKC, they've lost one game this season, and they're on the pace to break the NBA record. Their defensive rating is 8 points. But looking down here at this at Washington for 5, that's only 13 points of difference, whereas it's 22 points of difference between the power index overall. So it's just less of a gap overall between those, and so I think it matters less. Now, if you're doing something where you're predicting games where it's a team to win, or you're predicting over or under the point spreads, over and under the point totals, then maybe you want to throw some more weight into that or really evaluate those numbers deeper. But for my purposes, for just predicting the teams to win, a lot of these teams have their own ways to win, whether or not the stats back it up. So that's why we've been doing that. Something else, I think that's pretty much about it. These home and away ratings, we had that where if it's a team that's particularly poor at home or particularly good, for example, the Nuggets, I'm going to use them again. They've got the altitude at home. They, even with the new coach, the tail end of last season firing Mike Malone, they're still really, really good at home. Same thing with OKC or other teams. And some of these teams that are poor at home or have new coaches, we just set the standard at 3. Or if they've been having a particularly bad season, drop that down to 2.5. But in general, I think that 0.5 difference matters a little bit less. We also had the back-to-back at 1.9 points. That was just kind of the number I looked up online. It said that a back-to-back kind of changes the point spread by nearly 2. It said 1.9, so that's what we went with. But I'm excited to keep tracking this. Some days it's a lot of work where I think tonight there's 13 or 14 games. It's going to be a little bit of some work on the back end, but we already got that done for today, which it's good to be done. But yeah, if you have any suggestions for how to optimize this or just to save me some time, please let me know. As well, the last video that I made on this, most viewed video on the channel, it got us above 50 subscribers, so keep hitting that button. It doesn't cost you guys anything. 500 people over that, I think nearly 600 watched that video. If half of you guys subscribed, we'd hit the 100 subscriber goal by the end of the year in no time. So just consider doing that if you're interested in these videos, and I'll keep these prediction videos going if you guys are enjoying them. But that's going to be about it for today. I'll have some more content coming on college football, on the playoff. I want to talk about some ways to change the playoff and make it better coming soon. So stay tuned, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for some more videos.